Hey everybody, I'm Tommy and you are on the lifeboat. So this is one of the things that is, well, I guess for a lack of a better way to put it, this is by popular demand. As I have said many times on this program, oh man, I'm freezing up. Hello, Lisa Trimble. Hey, the Johnny Scoville. I am freezing up. I hope that this thing ends up working out for us. I have faith that it might. Come on now, Internet. So, Goddess Divine, good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. This show is literally by popular demand. I have talked a lot in the past about not being excited to continually talk about Diddy. But primarily that's because of the shortcomings that I exhibited the first time I did this. Make no mistake, I made more money on YouTube talking about Diddy than anything else I've ever talked about. However, and I did a lot of collaborations with a lot of really big channels. My name got out there, but I'm not particularly pleased at the product that I put out when I was doing Diddy. And I have done a couple of shows on him recently because some of the stuff that I'm hearing reminds me of the old days. Hey, Joseph, good to see you. It bums me out a little bit that we're back to that same kind of feeding frenzy, so to speak, where there's a lot of misinformation and people like the misinformation. I mean, there's a lot of people that seem to really... Hey, Smoke Keef, good to have you here. There are a lot of people that really hate this guy. And it's a unique situation for me in particular because I didn't live the greatest life. And I have been convicted. I've gone to prison. And Barbara, good to see you. Here's the problem. The problem becomes once you're a bad guy and once it's established that you are a bad guy, then people will believe anything that is said about you. And I've endured this personally in my life. And I'm not going to pile on to Sean Combs because the world wants to. So I got more emails after last night's show from people that said, please do more Diddy content. Please do more Diddy content than any other video I've ever done, which is bizarre to me. But here's the deal. I will do Diddy content. I'm not going to do it the way that I used to do it. So I think it's probably worth talking about the upcoming events in Diddy's life, because a lot of people are talking about the Little Rod lawsuit. As I talked about on my last show, about 10 to 20% of the time that there is sexual assault or sexual violence or anything in a lawsuit, about 10 to 20% of the time, the state will end up picking up that lawsuit. It's not a 100% of the time. The Cassie Ventura thing was really unusual because there was no conviction. They never went to court. If you go to court on a civil case and you win with 51%, right? It's preponderance of evidence. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a key distinction. So I'm going to say this one more time. You're not trying to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, which by definition is any reasonable person that looks at the case would go, yeah, I don't know. Right? Like I talked about the RFK assassination the other night. The fact that he was shot in the back, but the shooter was standing in front of him, that should be reasonable doubt. It was never brought up at trial, but that would have been reasonable doubt, right? A reasonable person would say that doesn't make sense. Preponderance of the evidence just means that there is a 51% chance that it probably happened the way that they're suing over. 51% means that you can go, yeah, it's probably more likely than not. Right? That's preponderance of the evidence. So the Little Rod lawsuit, I covered extensively. When this lawsuit first came out, which was February of last year, I did a ton of stuff on this lawsuit. It lists Universal Music Group. It lists Lucian Grange, the Lucifer Grange, the guy that runs that label. It lists Sean Combs and his kid, Christian Dior Combs. And there's a lot of people listed in this. And Christina Karam, who is very often called Diddy's Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, she has come out and absolutely said that nothing that has been said about her is accurate, that she didn't do any of these things. She is listed in 3 separate lawsuits. Everything that she's accused of is foul. But when she came out and made her statement, she said, and my life is destroyed by this. I believe that. Whether or not she's guilty of this, or whether or not this is just people piling on because they want Diddy so badly to be guilty, rest assured this has destroyed her life. This is also something I know a little something about. So I'm going to kid glove some of this stuff. And I'm going to start by saying this. Diddy denies all this crap, and so does Christina Karam. There, right? That's sort of the disclaimer. Here's the other thing that I'm going to say. You're going to hear more BS in the next couple of weeks because it pays. So what's happening right now in this lawsuit is that it's proceeding forward, and they're starting the process of discovery. Now, if I came out and said on my thumbnail, Christina Karam and P. Diddy discovery phase, the discovery phase is going to take a year. This is not a criminal case. There is no speedy trial. You're not going to see anything really rowdy that's going to start getting leaked or start coming out of this for probably a couple of years. I would imagine that this would be settled out, or, I mean, it'll be finished, not settled out, but it should be finished in 2027. So to start hyping this up and talking about the stuff that happened. So let's go over the lawsuit real quickly. There were some bombshell claims in this lawsuit. Some of the stuff is just pretty typical of what Diddy was accused of. Little Rod says that he was assaulted by him regularly, that Diddy walked around naked. But there's also he alleges, right? Allegedly, Diddy left him with Cuba Gooding Jr., who then groped him. Now, there's a lot of video. There's a lot of pictures. We don't know what they are. So, hello, Jane Aldrich. So for people to say, well, there's video proof of all of this. There's video, right? And I fell into this trap really bad the last time. There's video. We don't know what the hell the video is. But when this was really cooking is right around the time that, the guy that sort of got famous by saying that he had all of these tapes. None of those tapes were real. So we have to kind of guard ourselves going forward on this, our expectations versus reality. There's also talk of a shooting at a recording studio in Los Angeles. Little Rod says that the shooting terrified him, and he sued for mental anguish and post-traumatic stress disorder. That was thrown out. The RICO allegation in this has been thrown out. And there are a lot of people that seem to be reporting on the other side of this because they think it will also be sensational and grab views. And those people are saying, this thing is completely thrown out, it's all no good. And that's not the case at all. So the RICO was thrown out. And what's sad to me is that when you start looking at this, the reason that it seems like a lot of this stuff was thrown out is because Tyrone Blackburn doesn't seem to be handling this well. How you can get the gunshot thrown out, like how bad does your lawyer have to be? If you were in a place where someone shot through a door and you said you were traumatized by it, a judge isn't going to let a jury decide that one. So there has to be some BS on the part of the attorney. And people talk about this guy often as being horrible. I read some of the filings, and they look like they were written by a clerk in a federal law prison. They don't look like they were written by an attorney. Hello, Heather Rhodes. Good to see you here. What didn't get thrown out is the TVPA, or the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. This is a big deal. This is a huge deal. In this lawsuit, Little Rod says that he was active in arranging freak-offs. That's bad news for the truth, because the freak-offs make people go completely nuts. It made me go completely nuts. We want to believe everything that we hear about this. However, he says that he procured drugs, cocaine, ecstasy, perhaps the Tucci, the pink stuff, for the purpose of these freak-offs. He also hired the sex workers for these freak-offs. These allegations led him to file a $30 million lawsuit. Here are some questions that some critical thinking may be applied to. Who is Little Rod, right? Seriously, Rodney Little Rod. Does anybody ever watch a video where they break down who this guy is, what his past is, any of that? Probably not, because the narrative is Diddy's a scumbag and we're going to run with that. By the way, I think Diddy's a scumbag. I do. I don't think this is a good guy. But just because someone's a bad guy, you can't believe every single thing you hear about him. That's not critical thinking. It's a bad idea. So as far as this lawsuit goes, the TVPA, this is a trafficking charge. And the judge threw out a lot of this. He threw out a lot of stuff. He didn't throw out sexual assault. He didn't throw out the TVPA, which is the trafficking charges. These relate so closely to the previous case, the odds start to go up that this could end up turning into charges. The people that tell you it's a lock and that there are absolutely going to be charges on this, I mean, look what happened with Cassie, right? Cassie's case was unique in that video of her getting beat up was bulletproof. Now, granted, it was past the statute of limitations, but they knew that if they showed that to a jury, it was going to have an effect. And I think that that caused a feeding frenzy, you know, in a big way, not among the prosecution, by the way, but among the people on the street. And the disappointment in the conviction is because for a really long time, we talked about this guy being crucified, right? This guy needs to be dragged behind a car. He needs to be drawn and quartered. This is not a good dude. By all accounts, there's a lot of people that say this is not a good dude. But I think we got to guard ourselves going forward. There are 77 of these lawsuits currently. Diddy obviously is named in all of them. Christina Karam is named in 3 of them. It's odd, right? If we're doing critical thinking, the things that she's accused of in all 3 of these videos would lead you to believe that she is the Ghislaine Maxwell to Sean Puffy Combs, Epstein, that she definitely was facilitating this man having sex with people, and then she was facilitating covering it up. Okay. It looks that way if you read the 3 separate lawsuits, and I did today. However, there were 1,800 lawsuits at one time, right? There were 3,300 calls. Allegedly, there were 1,800 lawsuits. They were talking about all of these ridiculous numbers. It's got down to about 77 of them. My gut says that they're not all going to end up in court. We're going to see that pared down even further. But this one is moving forward, and it has gotten to the stage where they're going to have to start handing over to Diddy's defense team all of these tapes, freak-off tapes, all of these things that Little Rod filmed. Here's the deal. Diddy has priors for allowing people to follow him around and film everything. He is an egomaniac, in my opinion. He's a guy that shows a lot of narcissistic tendencies, maybe even malignant narcissistic tendencies. I am not a psychiatrist. I don't play one on YouTube, but this guy's jacked up. We've seen enough of his behavior that critical thinking can be sort of set aside. You watched what he did to Cassie Ventura. If you paid attention, you saw him go on and say, there's no truth to any of those things, like a week before the video broke. Then once the video broke, he did another video where he was like, no, that was me. I was at my all-time low. I want to take responsibility. You take responsibility after you're caught, right? And it was one of the worst apologies in history, except maybe the one that he did in court, right? Where he got up and basically just, everything that this guy has done has been self-serving. It's been disgusting. He made a video of himself where it kind of made him look like or had his defense team do it, where it made it look like this guy should be given a key to the city, which did happen, right? It happened in New York. This Little Rod lawsuit is going to be very interesting because if Little Rod wins this, he's asking for $30 million. I don't think there's a chance that he gets that because a lot of the grounds that he filed on, the PTSD was thrown out. They don't buy the gun stuff. I don't know why. I really don't. And I looked through the filings and all of that. I just think that I don't think he has great representation. Makes me a little bit nervous. I don't think he has great representation. But there's a lot of evidence that, and we even saw some of the videos because some of them leaked in the beginning. And there was some video of that shows Cuba Gooding Jr. Or no, I'm sorry, it was a still picture. But Cuba Gooding Jr. looking way too friendly with Little Rod. And obviously, this is part of the lawsuit. Whether or not this is going to rise to the level that they're going to be able to charge Sean Combs is really a crapshoot. And I watched a lot of people today, a lot of people that were a big part of this when I was still doing Diddy content, that are saying this is a lock. This is how Diddy gets put away for the rest of his life. I think that's a jump, man. I think that's a huge jump. None of us have any idea what all of these videos, all of these pictures are, right? But we did see the Pizza Man, if you remember him. I actually was sent freak-off videos that were so badly, what's the word I'm looking for? Photoshopped, right? These were just people and with bodies who ended up with faces like J-Lo. And I don't believe anything anymore. I believed a lot in the beginning. I believe that there is a lot of video that Little Rod took. So a little background real quick. Rodney Little Rod Jones is from Chicago, Illinois. And by all accounts, he's a fairly decent producer of music. So Diddy hired him to do the Love album. This is when Diddy was going to be going from the last incarnation, P. Diddy. He was going to go from P. Diddy to Brother Love, right? And this was the Love album. And 9 tracks were produced by Little Rod. Little Rod claims, and Diddy says, no, he's a con man, which is always one of my favorite terms. But he claims that Diddy promised him the moon, tons of money. He promised him that he was going to get a Grammy, probably an American Music Award. He made a lot of promises. And Little Rod just didn't produce this. He moved in. And I guess that this is, believe it or not, not that. Hello, Barbara Waite. This is not very uncommon with Diddy. Diddy liked to move people into his house to collaborate with. That to me is also a little bit creepy. Now, there is precedence to this. There are other great bands that have done this. Those great bands are not accused of sexually assaulting a lot of people. And Sean Combs is. Little Rod, after the Love album was done, he feels like he got stiffed. And a lot of people, right, say this is spilt milk. The guy didn't think that he got the payout that he should have. He didn't file this until considerably after the Cassie Ventura lawsuit. Cassie's lawsuit was filed the previous year, right, around November time. And he filed this in February. That may seem like a short period of time. It's not. And the Cassie Ventura lawsuit was public record in a lot of ways. You could go in and get a pretty good look at what Sean Combs was accused of. Much of the Little Rod lawsuit mirrors that. Now, critical thinking would say that's because they both experienced very similar stuff, right? That's logical. The other side of that equation is this is a guy that's really pissed off about not getting paid and not getting his Grammy. And he had enough time spent there that he could take everything that Cassie said and give it a try. Cassie got paid off allegedly $30 million. Turns out that wasn't the right number, but people have been saying it for a very long time. Allegedly, it was a little bit less than that. It was closer to the $20 million mark. That is all alleged, but that is gaining traction. Little Rod filed for $30 million. I kind of doubt that that one is a coincidence. I would be a little surprised if that was coincidental. Maybe it's me. Hold on one second, folks. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. This is family. All right. Sorry about that. Spanx Calhoun. David, good to see you. So logic could say, this is a guy just trying to get a paycheck. I can't answer that question. In the past, I would have come on and just said, Little Rod's solid. I don't know that Little Rod is solid. I feel like when a person has an attorney that is questionable, a lot of times it's because other attorneys don't grab those cases, and you've got to kind of deal with people that take cases that are less than solid. Just Joan, good to see you. I'm not saying that's the case here. I am saying his attorney is certainly not the choice I would go with if I was going into the Southern District of New York to go up against Sean Diddy Combs' legal team. My gut says they're going to steamroll Tyrone Blackburn. And by the way, I said last night on one of my shows that I didn't think Tyrone Blackburn was a good attorney. And I got an email from someone that said, you only said that because he's black. I'm absolutely blown away by the idiocy sometimes. Johnny Cochran, one of the best lawyers that ever walked the planet. Like, that dude had the hang of it, and he was very black. Who cares? What I'm saying is the guy's filings suck, right? They're just, this guy doesn't seem to have it together, and he's already been admonished by the judge. And he got a lot of stuff thrown out that I'm shocked got thrown out. The gun thing is specifically, if you don't remember this, because it's been a long time since I covered it, Little Rod was working in an LA studio when there was a shooting, according to Little Rod, that was inside the studio. In other words, people that they knew, somebody got pissed, a gun got fired, bullets went through a door. This was a bad situation, and he ended up super traumatized. The LAPD report says that this was a drive-by shooting. According to Little Rod, yeah, that's a great question, Barbara Wade. Now, according to what everyone is saying, but anyway, according to Little Rod, Diddy said to him, this is the story that we're going to come up with. This was a drive-by shooting. This wasn't one of my guys, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's the case. There was blood all over the bathroom. Supposedly the person was shot outside. This had to be traumatic for Little Rod. So how does that get tossed out? You could say, again, critical thinking, maybe because it's only his testimony. This is what the court says. They said that there wasn't sufficient proof that there was PTSD caused by this. Well, then your lawyer sucks. Because if you're at a shooting where someone gets shot and the person who you work for tells you that you have to lie to the police, that should be some PTSD. That to me seems logical, right? But that got thrown out because it didn't rise to the level. They didn't prove to the judge that this caused post-traumatic stress disorder to Little Rod. So, but in answer to your question, does he have anyone to corroborate? Yes and no. What he has for corroboration, according to what we know now, is hours and hours and hours of videotape, audio tape, pictures that are going to prove his narrative. This is what he says. He also said that he was sexually assaulted by Little Miami's cousin. You remember this? Diddy went into the bathroom and basically forced this dude to have sex with Little Miami's Little Miami. I feel so stupid calling people names like that. Little Miami's cousin apparently went in there and forced herself on him. And if you're saying that can't happen, trust me, it can, right? It can, especially if somebody's threatening you with a gun. You absolutely could have sex with somebody that you didn't want to as a man. That can happen. However, that was also tossed out. Again, it was tossed out because it wasn't showing that this damaged his career. It keeps getting back to, this is not a criminal case. This is a civil case, right? So it's not about proving your case in the same sense of the word. It's about damages. It's about you getting paid. So yeah, maybe the shooting happened. Maybe the judge goes, yeah, the shooting happened. But if Tyrone Blackburn doesn't tie that to this cost him money, get it? In other words, people talk to me all the time and say, you should sue this person. I have to show damages. I have to be able to document that what this person did. So if a person's out there and they're making videos that 30 people see and calling you everything under the sun, that's not damaging you. It sucks, but it's not damaging you. And if the person has been on welfare for 4 years, right, and doesn't have a job and can't feed their family, going after them probably isn't going to get you an awful lot of payback, right? So in the civil case, it is a completely different animal than it is. Civil court and criminal court are so different. Again, for those who got here late, preponderance of the evidence means that the 12 jurors just have to believe that there's a better than 50% chance that Diddy is guilty of this. Now, if that happens, the whole world is going to go, he's about to get indicted. You still have to then take it into a criminal court and prove it without a shadow or beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt is a hell of a lot more difficult than it is to prove something just better than 50%, right? Getting off of being a diddler defendant because it was a conflict because of Little Rod. Not sure exactly what that means. Getting off being a diddler defendant because it was a conflict. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that means. But this is going to be, people are going to start screaming that all of these things are going to lead to indictments. And then people are going to be really pissed off and they're going to say that it's a rich guy and this is why he didn't get indicted. These are things that that you really have to take into account. A civil action versus a criminal action are two very, very different things. If Cassie Ventura's lawsuit did not have the video of her being beat up, then that may not have led to the investigation that it did. You have to prove a loss, a decrease of revenue. Is that how it works? Yeah, you have to show how it hurt you financially. You have to show how it hurt a reputation so badly that you can no longer make a living or that your income is damaged. And a perfect example of this would be something like this. If a guy says, hey, that Tommy Scoville's a piece of crap and he did X, Y, and Z. And then I get a call from my sponsor who, will throw it out, Nike. And Nike goes, yeah, we're dropping you because of the video that guy made. Now I got a bulletproof lawsuit to go in and do a civil case. I can go in and say what this person said, right? What this person said lost me a contract that was making me $10 million a year. Now it's a cut and dry case of this is the loss. Now you just have to go in and have a jury decide if the video did make my my client, my sponsor, drop me. And you bring in affidavits and you bring in documents and the email where they said, we're dropping you because of this video and you're going to get paid. And these things happen all the time. Little Rod's lawsuit is different than that. He's going to say that he got screwed over, but he's also going to say that the emotional distress from all of this, that's another thing that you can sue for, right? The emotional distress is legit. So, but the TVPA is the one that really needs to be concentrated on. The fact that Tyrone Blackburn got that through and that the judge agreed, this is talking about trafficking people. This is a pretty vicious law. If they prove that beyond a preponderance of, they prove it by a preponderance of evidence, so 51% or greater that Diddy's guilty of this, then the odds that the state is at least going to take a very hard look at this entire lawsuit goes through the roof. The fact that a lot of what he's accused of mirrors everything that he just went to court for can either help him or hurt him, being Diddy. The fact that he just beat a RICO case, this isn't a RICO case. It was supposed to be, but it got thrown out. And the reason that it got thrown out, the RICO part of it, again, he couldn't really document that all of these people were profiting off of basically Christina, according to the judge in this particular case and his ruling, you would have had to prove that all of the people that you're listing in this lawsuit were all doing the same thing for the same reason. So they were all pushing for the sex. They were all pushing for the money. They were all pushing for. Christina Karam is going to be the most interesting character in this because she's been able to dodge the bullet for a really long time. This is going to require her to sit down for depositions. That is going to be interesting. We may find out that this woman ran a business. We may find out that everything that was said about her is BS. Nobody wants to hear that, but that could be what we find out. Ethiopia Hoptamarian was her predecessor, right? The person that she took over from, the person she took over from was actually someone named after she was named after one of the 12 astrological signs. I can't remember which one it is. Ethiopia Hoptamarian, although at one time worked for Diddy, now she has worked for Motown and a couple of other records, but she is listed in this as well. All of these people who are listed in this lawsuit are going to have to sit down and be deposed. This is going to be very interesting because since this circus started, we really have only heard from Christina Karam once. And the statement was brief as hell. She denied everything, right? Obviously, that's probably logically. She denied absolutely everything. And she said, this is destroying my life. I believe that this is destroying her life. I don't know whether or not this woman was intimately involved in the setup of the freak-offs and all of that. I said many times on my channel that she was, and it was based on people who said it that are no longer credible in my mind. I meant when Blackburn withdrew from representing Diddy, he can't represent them both. It's a conflict of interest. Legally, he can't, I believe. Correct. You can't represent. Yeah, that would absolutely be a massive. I'm sorry, James. You're 100% right. You cannot represent or have anything to do with them in terms of like, even if you're not representing them, but you own some kind of a business interest with them or anything else, they take conflicts of interest pretty seriously. Ashley, good to see you. This is going to be fascinating because of all of the discovery we're going to get via depositions. This is going to be a very, very interesting thing for us who have been following this. I would encourage everybody to not believe everything until we see what comes out, because this is going to ramp up. I promise you. And the reason I know this is now I do a Diddy show and people freak out, and I'm getting all of these emails from people that want me to talk about Diddy. And it's very similar to the first time that I did this. I'm not going to be the same. I promise you, I'm not going to be the same. So I will say Diddy denies all of this. Christina Karam denies all of this. And I am going to do a very deep dive into Rodney Little Rod, right? Because I don't know who this dude is. And none of us do, right? The only thing that you're going to find on a cursory kind of investigation skips over him. It talks about the fact that he's very talented in terms of being a producer. You know, Diddy calls him a con man. That's funny coming from Diddy because now Diddy is a convicted felon. And I believe, this is my personal opinion, I believe that a lot of the things that Diddy was accused of in the RICO case are absolute facts. We saw the beatdown that he put on Cassie Ventura. We also saw how easily he lied to the public prior to the release and after the release of that video. This is a guy that had a drug problem, according to everybody that had anything to do with him for decades. This is something I know more about than most. And when you're on opiates for that long, your ability to tell the truth takes a hit. And it takes you a long time being off opiates before the habit of just lying every time it's easy. That's something that's very difficult to get over, right? So if it requires a long conversation to answer a question, you just lie. That's what junkies do because they don't want to have long conversations with anybody. This is a situation that we need to be critical thinkers throughout this because everyone in the world wants to see this guy shot, right? Everyone wants to see him stabbed in prison. Everybody wants to see him beat up. And I get that this guy, was violent and he did it on film. What he did to Cassie makes me grit my teeth, right? It should make everybody grit their teeth, right? This is one of those things that should make everybody angry. Looking at track record of Justin and Usher moving in with Diddy's is hazardous to your ass, literally. James, great comment. Now, here's the thing on this. This absolutely, critical thinking aside, there is all kinds of evidence that Usher went to a hospital, right? And we're all adults here, and I'm 30 minutes in, with tears in his rectum that required medical care. Not something you usually get wrestling on a bed for cornflakes, which is, one of the things that Diddy said on camera. There are, now, as far as Justin Bieber goes, almost everything that people have said concerning Justin Bieber and Diddy is BS, as far as I can research. It is. there was a big thing, and I did a video on it where he was allegedly performing oral sex on a football player in a club. And it took a long time, but when you got it from more than one camera angle and you saw it not from behind where his head absolutely looked like it was in a man's crotch, and when he turned around, he looked like he had water and stuff dripping all over him. When you watch that film from another camera angle, he is 3 feet away from that guy, right? This is how cameras sometimes lie. The guy was 3 feet behind him, right? So he's standing here and up on a riser, like there was a step, but a very large step so you could sit, is where the football player was standing. And the football player saw that someone was getting ready to take a picture and put his hand on his shoulder to turn him. That's the clip they took. And my gut is that they knew what the truth was, but man, did they get a lot of views on that bad boy. And all of us ran with it. The other video that was very popular shows Sean Combs having a conversation with Bieber, where he tells him he's going to give him a Lamborghini, right? You remember this one? And he says things like, hey, how come you don't call me anymore, right? And he goes, well, I didn't get your number. And he looks super uncomfortable. The reason he looks super uncomfortable is he's not a good actor. Before that was filmed, if you see the beginning of that, they say, all right, here's what we're going to say. They set this up to make a video. So what we saw was bad acting. We didn't see a guy that when he said, hey, I've got him for the next 48 hours. Okay, none of that was really what it appeared. And we have to be really careful. Hello, KM. Lost again. Good to see you. Jeremy Fowler, I'm glad you're here. We got to be critical thinkers, right? Every time somebody says something like, well, they researched this. Who researched this? Who did? Right? And I did this. You can make Tom Cruise look like a big man. Oh, it's a perfect example. This is why I love the audience. Jeff Bobby says, you can make Tom Cruise look like a big man, but he is a little man with camera tricks. That's right. He is not a big dude. But we will watch him in movies kiss women that are 6'3", right? 6'1", 5'11". He's always as tall or taller, right? He stands on a lot of phone books. He wears lifts. Robert De Niro. There's some very funny pictures of him walking on a set with heels this big on his shoes. Cameras can lie to you. I promise they can. One of the things that comes out a lot with the Charlie Kirk shooting, right? They saw a guy that was wearing full combat gear. You're taking a video of somebody from 200 yards away. If the guy's dressed in black and has on sunglasses, it can look like full combat gear. Cameras do lie. They're two-dimensional. They're not three-dimensional. So we couldn't tell by looking at it that the distance, if you were in the room, you'd go, that guy's nowhere near him. But you take a flat two-dimensional picture and you're like, oh my God, he's giving him head. And that caught so much traction. How bad do you have to feel for Diddy? I'm sorry, for Bieber. The entire world thinks Bieber blew an NFL football player, and they've got it on film. That's got to be disturbing, right? But this is the world that we live in now. And there are so many people that just assume that he was massively molested and passed around. And you know what? There's nothing to back it up. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, by the way. Critical thinking, Diddy definitely has some issues with Usher, and they're not hard to chase down, right? Bodyguards back it up. All kinds of people back up that Usher he did a hard time at the Diddy camp, right? At the, what did they call it? Flavor camp, right? Flavor camp, I don't think was a very happy time in the life of Usher. And those kind of things you can chase down and you can go, okay, there's some credence to that. But if you go ipso facto, he guaranteed did it to the next kid, that's a leap. And it's a leap that's not fair to the victim who you think is the victim any more than it is to the scumbag. Just because Diddy is a bad dude doesn't mean everything that he's ever accused of we're allowed to put on him. Trust me, as being a former bad dude, that sucks, right? Because I've been accused of being everything but a white guy. And it is a difficult thing to overcome. Once people think you're this, then anything someone says about you, they'll just go, oh yeah, no, he did this, this, and this. And they'll spit stuff out that they've never researched. I just don't want to be that dude. And you guys are clamoring for me to do Diddy content. This Diddy content may not be as much fun for people, but this is how I'm going to have to do it because I've gotten to a point where looking in the mirror is probably more important than the paychecks. And I can run with this. In fact, I won't say who, but I got a really lovely email from somebody that said, hey, we'd love you to come on and talk about Diddy. I'm going to pass. I don't want to be caught up in this Diddy thing the way I was the last time. I'm going to be doing a lot of other content. This isn't going to be a Diddy channel. But I'm going to bring a little critical thinking into this. This Little Rod lawsuit could be a real bonus for Little Rod. It does not mean that Diddy is going to be indicted on anything that is in that, because as a prosecuting attorney for the federal district of New York, right? Southern District of New York, you have to look at the case and go, I got to do way better than 51%, right? Convinced. You got to be about 95% convinced. You have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. 50% is not a reasonable doubt, but it'll get Little Rod $30 million or whatever he ends up suing for. Since almost half the case was thrown out, I would imagine he'll sue for less. And there's a lot of people that are making a big deal concerning all of the things. Hold on one second. Look at a sportscast. Everyone looks the same size in the studio. You can have a 7-footer sitting with a 5-footer. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It really is. David, thank you so much. What a kind thing to say. David says, love your channel. I stopped loving it. And that's an issue. And the reason I stopped loving it is because it's so easy to get really kind of cranked up. The coverage I did on Danny Masterson, I'm proud of. I am. I mean, I had talked to the victims in at least 2 of them. I had a really good idea of what was going on in that. I felt really confident about that stuff. And unfortunately, I think that people wanted the same thing out of Diddy, and I fell for it. I allowed myself to really get swept up. And if you watched all of it, and there are some people that watched all of my Diddy stuff. Mom, good to see you. Me saw Smokes. How are you? I'm sorry. Mom, good to see you. There are people that watched all of it, and you could see the shift. It didn't happen. You could see the shift. I sat on panels and listened to people say things that literally blew my mind, right? And I'm not trying to pick fights with any of these people. I don't talk about content creators. I don't do that stuff. But there are people that said things so patently absurd, right, that I even called a couple of them on it while I was on panels, which does not make you popular, I promise. But I want so badly to say one. I'm just not trying to pick a fight with anybody. But just some of the stuff that was said was absolutely ridiculous, and everybody was believing it. And that's not something that I want to do, right? I saw an interview once with Johnny Carson, and somebody said, why, out of curiosity, do you never tell anybody what your political leanings is? There are people that think you're a coward for that. And his answer was fascinating. He said, my audience loves me. I don't want them to hate a political candidate because they love me. That wouldn't be ethical. I don't want anybody believing any of this stuff because they dig my channel. So I'm going to be putting this stuff out. I'll tell you my opinion. I don't think in the past I was saying opinion. I was careful to go allegedly because I didn't want to get sued. But I'm not going into this way. So if I bummed you out on this, send me an email and tell me not to do Diddy content and I'll stop doing it. But the reason I'm doing this today is because so many people reached out and said, what's the truth on the Christina Karam thing? Discovery is about to happen. Discovery is going to take a year. I mean, maybe more. So in a criminal case, you have a right to say, I want a speedy trial, which Diddy did, right? So they set that out within a year, which doesn't happen very often in the feds, I assure you. So it crunches things. Now you have to hand over discovery and they give you 2 dates and you got to get all of it over to them. This is way different. They're going to be filing ungodly amounts of paperwork. And then when they get to the part where everybody starts going like this, both sides are going to file. There are going to be these summary judgment things that are filed that try to avoid going to trial. It's like saying to the judge, look, everybody that looks at this is going to be more than 51%, the preponderance of evidence if we go to a jury trial on this. And a judge does have the ability to go, yeah, you know what? I think I can give a summary judgment to Little Rod, or the other way around. So this is going to take a long time. So the people that are hyping you up and telling you you're about to hear this information, and I watched 3 of those videos today, maybe 4. One was balanced, but they did it in the tone that I used to do it in. So by the end, you still want to kill someone. And that's not really what I'm trying to do anymore, man. It's not really where I want to go with this. You want me to talk about what I'm interested in? No more, no less. Barbara Wade, I appreciate the hell out of that. I really do. Now, I'll tell you something. I'm wildly interested in this case. I really am. I'm wildly interested in this case. The problem is that I was wildly interested in it before, and I became one of those go-to guys that someone would call on the panel when you just wanted to get your audience really pissed off at Diddy. And that's probably not the Hi, my friends, that pretty girl. I'm grateful you viewed Derek Lee Cardella Smith's case fairly, but all heck is about to break out. You're right, it is. And I watched videos today, right, about the Cardelo Smith case. And I want to believe Cardelo Smith so badly I can't explain it to you. However, this is a guy that filed so many BS lawsuits that you just can no longer believe it. When I looked at the stamps that were on those things, he took a stamp and then he typed in all of the stuff. So you got to go, sorry. Even if everything that Cardelo Smith is saying is true, there's no credibility there. There isn't. You know, it's been said many times in many places that if they can document that someone is a heroin addict, no lawyer will ever put them on the stand, because the other side, you handed the reins over to Jag. Well, you know what? I don't blame you. The Cardelo Lee Smith thing is one of the greatest examples of how it's very easy to get caught up, because the story's fantastic. The story is absolutely fantastic. And allegedly, there was a visit to the jail from Diddy. Now, I can't document that, but that in association with all of these suits that he filed, and he got a summary judgment against Diddy for an ungodly amount of money until they looked at it closer and went, oh, this is BS. He didn't even serve the papers to where he was supposed to. It was just BS. And I'd love to believe it. I really would. Unfortunately, I can't. And that's hard, right? That's hard. I've kind of turned the reins over in the BS department to anybody that wants to take them. But from this point forward, I'll make less money, but I'm not going to run with stuff that I can't verify. The things that I'm talking about today, I looked up on Pacer. I also looked at 3 articles from the New York Times, one from the Post. LA wrote an article that I went back to find about the shooting that Little Rod talked about. I'm not researching anything on YouTube, right? And I started that about the last month of Diddy content that I was making before. And then I just got disgusted, because the people who are really famous in the Diddy universe, this is their living now for the rest of their life. And once you tie your income to one story, then you have to continue to create, right? You have to constantly be creating, and you have to have thumbnails that are going to get people to watch them. So you even if you're just clickbaiting it a little, you have to push the truth maybe a little bit, right? And then you can get in there and talk about both sides and be balanced or whatever. Try that for 2 months. And what happens is you get in there and the people ask questions that they want red meat. And if you throw them red meat, you're going to get paid more. And that is a trap that is really easy to fall into. I no longer want to do that kind of content. I really don't. And it's probably because I've had my teeth kicked in, right? I've seen what taking parts of a quote and running with it can do personally. I've seen what kind of damage can be done by things that aren't true. And I'm not looking to see Christina Karam be hunted down and treated like crap for the rest of her life if she's not guilty of what she did, right? That's not a good thing. It's a terrible thing. And critical thinking wise, we probably should hold out a little suspension of disbelief, right? Or a little suspension of belief in this case, until we hear exactly what this woman either gets found out about or not. Then send them on over. Send them on over. Did you look at the stamps? See, I have a lot of the original documents. Where I run into trouble is that, are you talking about the police reports of his shooting? Because I read that, and that stinks. That should be reopened. I do believe. Oh, you're talking about KK. I believe that Christina Karam has dirt on her hands. I do. But nothing's black and white for me anymore. When I started, Tommy, is Diddy going to jail? Diddy is already in jail. Diddy is going to be leaving jail and going to prison, I would imagine, in the next 7 to 10 days, unless they're really worried about where they're sending him. Grand Prairie usually gets that done within 2 weeks to a month. He is going to be going to a prison in the New York area. I'm guessing it's going to be Raybrook, right? Because that's going to be close enough where they can shuttle him back if he has to go to court in the Southern District of New York, where there are many lawsuits, including Little Rod's. And this is where that's going to be the next one that he's going to have to deal with. So they're trying to keep him in the New York area. And this is obvious because it says it in his judgment of commitment. I read that, I think yesterday. You could go back and listen to that. But he is definitely going to be doing the time that he has remaining in New York, which is funny since his primary residence are in Florida and Los Angeles. I think this is a case of them. Diddy probably owns some property in New York as well. I know he did at one time. I don't know if he still does. I know that when he was trying to get probation, he was talking about buying, not probation, but bail. He was talking about buying a place in New York that he could stay at. All of that's going to start getting really twisted. His ability to buy and sell things are going to start getting a lot harder because that's part of the terms of his post-conviction release, or what they call in the feds probation. When he gets out on that probationary period, he can't just go and buy and sell things. He can't jump on a plane and go places. He has to surrender his passport. He has to get permission to leave where he's living. Do we know how long he's getting? What he got was 50 months, right? So he got 4 years and 2 months was the sentence. Has nothing to do with RICO. He was found not guilty on that. That was for 2 counts of violating the Mann Act. The Mann Act is transporting people across state lines for the purpose of pandering, right? Selling sex. So it's flying a hooker across state lines, or grabbing someone that's not a hooker, driving them across state lines and paying them for sex. In essence, turning them into a hooker. But if you bring someone to another state and pay them to have sex, that's a problem. I do believe that Diddy is probably worse. However, there was a time that nothing on earth could have convinced me of anything else. And that, for me, and I'm not judging anybody else, but for me, that's a dangerous mindset, right? The truthy thing, where something is so true that even facts aren't going to make it otherwise. I believed some lawsuits that were going up against Diddy, and then I researched the crap out of them, and there was nothing there. Nothing. There were people who filed lawsuits that said, and they were so intricate, and they were so, down to the details. Like, this person was there, and they pistol whipped him, and all of these things happened. And then you look, and the person says it happened in this time frame. However, in that time frame, he wasn't even in the United States of America. That becomes a problem. And you can go, well, they could be off by, no, it wasn't, off by, it was months of him not being anywhere near where this allegedly took place. So the problem becomes, hey, for always, forever, and for life, good to see you. The problem becomes this. Number one, it becomes an echo chamber. And I was one of the loudest voices in that echo chamber. Pretty girl, I'm not doubting you. I promise you I'm not. But let me think of how to say this right. There's a lot of stuff that came out on YouTube that I believe, but that's not evidence. There's also, so evidence to me is something that, so chain of custody, right? You got a gun that somebody says that they used in a shooting. From the time you take that gun to the time it gets to where it's tested, we need to know exactly what happened to that gun the entire time, all along the route. We need to know a chain of custody for any evidence, because if not, you start getting into these gray areas where things can be played with, right? These are like rules of evidentiary, for evidence rules for the feds or for the state. There are rules for evidence, not on YouTube, right? So on YouTube, like the Cardella Smith thing is a great example. People did videos and held up the filings and held up all of this stuff that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Diddy did this, but it wasn't true. Yeah, I would love a copy of that stuff. If you want to send it to me, TommyScoville@gmail.com. Because now, even a filing, right? So if a court case is filed, until it is litigated, right? Now, all of those things could be accusations, but until they are litigated and the jury or the judge rules one way or the other, they're accusations, right? And I have been accused of some things that you would not believe. It really has to be, at least for me, it is my name, TommyScoville@gmail.com. And for those of you who go, that's not your name, TommyScoville@gmail.com. And I would love that. Well, I'm glad that you found me on Sean's channel, and I'm glad that you stuck with me through it. I was in a feeding frenzy. I was a loud voice in an echo chamber that didn't do any real good for truth. And I'm not trying to be cool for Diddy. Do you understand? This isn't about me becoming a Diddyite. I can't stand the dude. I'm honest enough to tell you that. The Cassie Ventura thing is enough for me that I think that he should have gotten a much longer sentence for punching and kicking a woman. That alone should have got him 20 years, in my humble opinion. However, that doesn't mean that if tomorrow somebody accuses him of having sex with a giraffe, I'm going to go, obviously he did, right? Obviously he did. He beat the crap out of Cassie Ventura. He's definitely, a giraffe banger, and I stayed in that arena long enough to hear about sacrificing babies, about judges who got thumbs up and thumbs down to send people to prison from the back of the room, and things that just don't pass the smell test to me, right? It just, and when you start to tell people, at the time I was probably doing 4 or 5 different shows regularly. I was going on a lot of people's platforms, and they would, you talk before you go on, and I would say, I don't buy half of what I'm hearing. It's not good for business. And it's disingenuous to go on and run with something that you're not convinced of because it's going to gin up the audience and probably get you some super chats. And I just don't want to be that guy anymore. I've started to take really critical looks at a lot of the things that are happening. There are people all over the world and all over the United States of America that believe things that are absolute BS, right? That are just absolute BS, but they've been repeated so many times. I did a show on the gerbil incident, right, with Richard Gere. Not only did that not take place, there is not one case ever reported in the United States of America where somebody went to a hospital or somebody was arrested or anything that happened with a gerbil and a backside. So literally, this is an urban myth. But there are people that will tell you, I read newspaper articles about it. No, you didn't. I promise you didn't. There's not one hospital record. There's not one newspaper record. This was a rumor that got so much traction that now people believe that there are guys all over the world shoving rodents in their rectum. And that's dangerous. And it was dangerous when the rumor came out, and it was word of mouth at people at concerts and parties. Now we've got this thing, right? And BS can spread like a wildfire. And look, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I'm not sticking up for the president of the United States, but he is not a convicted rapist. And the number of people in America who say he was convicted of rape, no, he wasn't. That's just not true. And to say a guy was convicted of rape if he wasn't is kind of a big deal, right? Trust me, that's not cool. Or if you listen to the entire sentence when he was talking about the protests with the Nazis there, he didn't say there were great people on both sides of the equation. He said there were good people there on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, I'm not talking about the white supremacists. But they don't put that in, which means they literally intentionally cut the back off and get half of America to believe BS. This plagues me because I have a platform. It might be this big, but there was a time where 1,300 people were in my live chat. And I just don't want to be that person ever again, man. I just don't want to be that person ever again. There are a lot of things that get reported over and over and over again, and I gotta be honest with you. I'm just not going to participate in it. Now, I will tell you the truth. This lawsuit could absolutely be a very, very bad thing for Sean Combs, and I don't just mean financially. As I said, the statistics are this: in a lawsuit that has a sexual offense in it, how often does that go to an actual criminal charge? Between 10 and 20% of the time is the statistic. However, it happened to Bill Cosby. It happened to Epstein. Famous people, it tends to happen to far more. The reason? Because all of us start bitching really loud when it doesn't happen. So if this thing goes all the way through and we find out in discovery that Christina Karama's, had a hand in this stuff, then we're going to end up looking at a very different landscape when it comes to Sean Combs. That said, his biggest problem has nothing to do with that. In my humble opinion, his biggest problem right now is how he's going to do time. This stuff I know a little bit more about, right? And he has already snitched before leaving county jail. In a statement that his lawyer read, he said, everybody in my unit is doing drugs. That may not sound like a big thing to you. That is a really big thing. The next thing he said was, and the cops aren't doing anything about it. I think the cops might want to hurt me. So you just snitched on cops and on inmates. That is a problem. Now he has to go to a yard and he's going to have to walk the yard. I know people think he's walking a yard or he's in a jail. He's in a unit that he never leaves. he's in a unit with a bunch of other guys who are in the same boat, right? The Mangione shooters in there. These are people that they have determined can't be in general population. He's going to go to a yard, and at least in the beginning, they're going to try him in general population. I promise you. Nobody goes straight to PC. That's a very rare thing. You go to a yard, and when he gets there, they're going to sit down with SIS. That's the FBI inside prison. They're called SIS. They do all the investigating. They do the drug tests. They do all of that stuff. Yeah, like barracks. He's in it. In the feds, we call them dorms, but yeah, it's like a barracks. He's in a very large room that's got like 12 to 20 beds in it, right? Depending on the size of the unit. I think they said there are 28 people in his, so it's a 14-bed unit because they're bunks. So there's 14 beds in there, and it's all one big unit with a television, a phone, a couple of showers. It's not where he's going. That's where he wanted to go. Fort Dix is like that. And he wanted to go to something like that because they tend to have a lot less violence and a lot more freedom. That isn't going to be his life. He's probably going to end up at Raybrook, which means he's going to be in a cell. Now you have to get along with your cellmate. But before that happens, when you get there, the head of SIS sits down and goes, hey, Mr. Combs, obviously I know who you are, but I got to ask you some questions. Are you on drugs currently? No, that kind of thing. And then he's going to say, by the way, is there any reason that you can't go into general population? And Diddy's going to have a choice to make. And if Diddy says, yeah, I don't think I should be in general population, with all due respect, and I'm not trying to say anything that's going to bum anybody out, but he will be labeled a bitch for the rest of his life in prison. And that's a tough way to do time, right? That's not a word you want to hear people call you. PCing up is not something that's viewed honorably. And I don't know how much of an option he's got, especially if they want to keep him close to New York, right? So his attorneys and everybody else are probably saying to him, look, this isn't a super hard yard. Just get in there, see if you can pull this off. Just do your time. I think the biggest thing he has to worry about right now is that he's going to have to go in and get in with a cellmate. And that cellmate might go like this. Hey, how you doing? Come on in. Yeah, get some coffee. If your cellmate doesn't like you and you're in trouble with him, you're not going to know it until about 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. Because then he's got 45 minutes to kick the crap out of you before the next time they count. And that's if the cops are on it. If the cops aren't on it, might be an extra 5 minutes. But like, in the Epstein stuff, when they said they skipped 2 counts, it's never happened in the history of the BOP. If you skip a count and you don't call it in, they lose their mind. They shut the prison down. All of that is fallacy. By the way, well, he does have an option. He does have an option. I mean, they said the same thing about Whitey Bulger, right? And he went into general population and got his throat cut. So Diddy's got the option of trying to walk the yard. He's going to have to try to give that a chance, right? Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult thing for this cat to do his time. When he gets, his ego is going to be decimated by the things that they have said he has to do on federal probation. They're talking about him having to do sex offender classes. They're talking about him having to go to drug classes constantly, and he's not going to be able to be P. Diddy. He can't manage any artists. He can't surf the internet without them monitoring what he's doing. I think that as much as the Christina Karam and all of those things could turn into new cases, they could pick up the Cassie Ventura thing from California and run with it. That's a possibility. The guns could end up in Fed. It's, Raybrook is always unlocked. There's a lot of truth to that. It didn't used to be. Raybrook used to be wide the hell open, and then they got a new warden, and that baby is locked down a lot. And when you're on lockdown, if you're not good at doing he might not make it in there. No, he might not. And when you go to a place where you're locked down all the time, I was in Victorville. Look at this. Look what I got. It's a cat. When I was at Victorville, we spent 6 months on lockdown. Then we spent 3 months on lockdown and then 6. So in a year, we did 9 months on lockdown. If you do not get along with your cellmate, you guys are going to kill each other in lockdown. It's 24 hours a day locked in the same box with somebody. That is a hard way to do time. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out, and I will be reporting on it. I'll also be doing some stuff on the Epstein case because that is starting to get interesting. And this is a cat that no longer likes to get in the basket, but she's still the greatest cat in the world. All right, people, between now and the next time I see it, because the Johnny Scoville is coming up after me, and I certainly am not going to screw that up. I actually want to drink something hot tonight. So I'm going to be doing 1 hot minute with the Johnny Scoville. If you want to see me more, you can head over there. That's where I will be. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor, man. Critical thinking. If you watch a video and they tell you that Christina Karama is going to be in prison in the next 3 days, you might want to doubt it, right? Don't get caught up in it. Don't let somebody like me get you caught up in it. A little critical thinking will go a long way. I'm Tommy. I love you guys. See you on the next one.